All right, here it is, guys. I'm actually going to do this one all from scratch. As you can see, she's completely stripped. The only thing I did prior to was the pressure valve here for the EPC, just because there's one hell of a spring behind it and I do struggle, and there's no way my cameraman could have got that. But we have a nice clean valve body. Pressure valve is done. This is something I highly recommend to everybody, and we're going to talk a whole lot about this thing today. Strip your valve body. It's the only right way to do it. It's not too hard to take apart. Lay everything out in order. Take your time. That's all this takes. It's a giant puzzle. And the good news is most valves are not going to fit in backwards. Some will, but most of them won't. So, and you have to use all the pieces. You got a piece left over, you fucked up. So in this section, we're going to talk about the valve body, some of the things to watch out for, failure points, the separator plate, gaskets, and I'm going to do the accumulator for the 1-2 because that does actually tie into the valve body, and I'm going to give you a general idea on how to set your unit up based on what you're doing. We also have a mountain of new solenoids, which I also suggest unless you're really just trying to do this on a budget. The solenoids typically do last for quite a while. We have a plethora of valves, which because of the angle you may not be able to see, but we'll be going through every single thing. Now, I guess the easiest one to start with is we'll just get some parts out of the way. So we're going to do the separator plate. Now, normally you all know I do not like Transgo. I really don't like their stuff. But for the average guy, some of the stuff is actually decent that I wouldn't mind using if I didn't do this for a living. I do use these still once in a while. They have a damn good separator plate. This is a wear item. It's very important to check this over, okay? One of the things that happens to this are the steel balls with a lot of miles slamming into these, little holes here. This is your boy right here. This particular check ball hole next to the lockup circuit and the servo feed. This is second gear feed, okay? Think about how many times you hit second gear when you drive, even on a daily driver scenario. It's real often, all the time. This check ball likes to beat this to death. There are, we'll talk about this valve in a minute, but Fits-All makes a very cheap plate fix. Transgo has shrunk the hole and developed a thicker plate. If you can afford this, great option. So, failure points on the plate are basically the balls getting stuck or piercing through. You could have a variety of shift problems because of that. The only other thing I got to say about the plate is it's very self-explanatory. I'm not going to tell you what each individual thing is because a lot of it's really useless to know. I'd say 10% of it's actually important. If you have a shift kit or are planning to install a shift kit, just follow the instructions. My advice is set it up on the conservative side rather than the hardest. Conservative, in my opinion, with shift kits, especially the off-the-shelf ones, is performance. I have my own, we worked really hard to develop it and I do my own thing. You do yours. Just follow the instructions and what the particular shift kit tells you to do. Transgo, Sonax, there's many of them out there. So drill your holes as you see fit. Just don't go too big. All we're going to do is basically rub a little grease on it to help the gasket stick. It's nice to have a light. Make sure all your holes are see-through, especially your TCC holes, converter clutch feed hole, and the 2 shift solenoid holes here. The 1-2 shift solenoid A and shift solenoid B. Those are probably the 4 holes, 5 holes that you will fuck up. Just take your time, put a little grease on it, and move the gasket around. Make sure it's right. We don't want to do this twice. Nobody likes pulling transmissions out of their vehicles. These are OEM screens before we put the gasket on. These are not essential. It's not going to make or break your unit. but I do like them. They do tend to keep your solenoids a little cleaner and could prevent a no shift problem due to a solenoid clogging up. This is your shift solenoid screen. This is your EPC screen. This one likes to collapse. I suggest putting a small spring or transghost piece to keep it from collapsing under pressure. Just a little tip there. Little details, guys. This particular EPC screen goes on this side through the bottom. So your plate is going to lay like this on the transmission, and that's going to go through the bottom. And it's just going to clip in. It won't fall out. The shift solenoid one will go near the shift solenoids. Now this one is a little bit harder to get in, but you just ease it in, and I may need to flip this over and sometimes you got to take your screwdriver and push that little snappy clip just like that. So that's what that should look like. That's the bottom of it. Now, these gaskets are labeled CV and VB. CA or CV, whatever the hell it was. This goes on your case side. This is your valve body side, VB. Do not mix them up. That is a whole nother set of problems. So the side we just greased is the valve body side. And I'm not doing a shift kit today because we're just going to assume we are a daily driver and we just want to get back on the road. Maybe we fucked our pump up or something. Improper spacing. Now we smear the back side, and how you'll know it's the back side is the round 1-2 accumulator will be facing your right, which on camera it probably looks like my left. I'm not sure how the man's shooting me right now, but it's pretty cut and dry. And just take your time, smear it around, make sure nothing's overlapping. Fold it up, looks good to me. That's our plate. We're done with that. We're going to set that aside. We're going to pretend we put a shift kit in. Now, this is going to be the big section, okay? Our valve body. Some of the failure points in this I'd like to talk about is the plastic pistons, okay? This is the forward that goes into the valve body, okay? Main forward oil, remember that important forward sprag and forward clutch pack. Well, a lot of fluid goes through this. This also reduces the shock when going from P to D. It's an accumulator. It's meant to cushion. You want to keep these. Accumulators are your friends. Watch out for builds. Like, don't block them. I wish everybody would stop doing that. Don't lock down accumulators. It's a shitty shift. And it feels like shit. This is your 1-2 accumulator. And I'm glad I found this because your 1-2 accumulator and your valve body setup play hand in hand. It's all about, this goes with the shift kit. This one is a failure, and I haven't seen it in a while, but it's very common. These plastic pistons like to crack right around the center, and that causes a big leak. I hope you guys can see that. It's very tiny. That causes a big leak. This is where the average feller, garbage, trash. This is where the average guy from Transtar, WIT, Glow, wherever you want to get your parts from, wherever your preference is. Transgo sells some pretty expensive metal accumulators. These are not ours. We have billet ones. We have double sealing. This is good enough for a daily driver and a huge improvement. Metal ones are not going to just crack on you. They're going to seal very well and last a long time, as long as it seals good. So, if you're in the market, not trying to get on the road as fast as you possibly can, buy those. Metal pistons are good things. And all we're going to do with those, just to get this out of the way, is simply stretch our lathe seal on one, and then stretch our lathe seal on forward. Not too hard. we're going to do our 1-2 accumulator. Now we should have a general idea of how we're going to set up our transmission for what we are building the vehicle for, or just daily driving in general. We're going for daily driving, so we are going to use the stock spring set. In the older types, it usually comes with 2, an outer and an inner. We call this a bumper. In the later models, 07 and up, they typically just came with a bumper. You can change the 1-2 shift feel just by adjusting these springs quite a bit. For reference, stiffer springs is harder, and softer is softer. It's pretty simple how the 60 works. Other transmissions work very backwards. All we're going to do in this instance should be the only 2 springs in your parts pile that you have that are this size. You're going to drop the center spring, if you have one, around the center, and the outer around that center spring. Then you're going to grease your lay seal up, because what we want right now is just, we want to keep our vehicle the same. We're not looking to change anything. We want a nice stock shift. You should hear a whoop, and it should move relatively freely and work as intended. Our 1-2 accumulator is done. It is set up stock. Valve body. So I'm going to get into some of the pain in the ass valves first. These are ones that typically will not pose a problem to you, but you want to take them out, inspect some of the caps anyway, because there is a problem in here, and it's the one I talked about in the beginning of the video that people don't realize about third gear. Today, I'll just save that valve. Today we're going to talk about these 2 sets of valves here. Okay? So this is where your orange solenoid typically is. This is where your forward accumulator is. Orange is your 3-2 downshift. And it's this 2 set of valves with the roll pin. This is your problem child. If you have rebuilt your unit 100 times, done everything the manual says, third gear just will not stay there, and you keep losing it pretty quickly, this could be your problem. Many people don't know, between the reverse abuse and the 3-2 downshift valves here, we have this guy in the middle, separating that third gear fluid from reverse. It sees fluid erosion, and there are always leaks in a transmission. You'll never get this to seal exactly at 0, but you do want it very, very sealed. So the simple fix is, these are cheap, replace it. But you want to look for a really different pattern, and this one doesn't have it. It's a little scratchy, but you'll clearly see it. Unfortunately, I don't have an example, but it's very white. It will almost look pure white, and that is the fluid eating the metal away, blowing by it. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to put in our reverse abuse valve in this orientation. That small screwdriver I was telling you guys about, just work that back in there, and we have our spring sitting around our roll pin. This is where it gets a little tricky. This is where I may struggle and block your view a little bit, just because this spring does have tension, and you will have to line up the roll pin hole with the other hole. So very gently, just keep tapping it through there. And you may require another pick, because mine, it did just turn a little bit on me. So keep that straight. This may be where my Phillips head comes in. Okay, we have it pushed back. Now we're going to do is grab our roll pin. I think I'm off just a wee bit. Just push it up against your belly. Take your time, and you'll feel the roll pin go. that's in. The next valve is your 3-2 sequence here. And I don't think I mixed them up. Forgive me if I did. I am thinking about a whole lot right now. And we're just gonna ease that in. All these valves should be a very, very, I don't want to say tight, but good fitting valve. There should be no slop. The bore and the valve, typically I think they have like something like 300 thousandths of space for a little bit of oil, but it isn't much. Space does need to be there. So we want to push that valve right up against the cap, put our purple and yellow spring in. If it's not purple and yellow, that's okay. You know, sometimes they're old. Make sure your springs are in good condition. If not, replace them. Springs are extremely important in an automatic. Something not a lot of companies do. They just reuse them. A lot of people neglect them. These little details make or break it. This is another example. And actually this is one I wanted to show you on the cap we just put in. This is the end plug. You'll have several of these. This white stuff right here is where the fluid has been eroding it. Now this is okay because this is normal. You're gonna see this half eroding. That means the other half's blocking it, keeping it from escaping out. Awesome, that's what we wanna see. Or these plugs are cheap, buy them. So we're gonna put that back in. Should be firm as well. We have a clip. And bingo, assembly complete and replaced plug. Third gear phantom problem that literally is so overlooked when you've done everything else could be corrected. Something to watch out for on that unit you've just been chasing. Next valve we're going to do, very simple, is the fourth gear 3/4 upshift, and it goes in this orientation here. Spring against the cap once again. So that will just go in there, and we'll put, inspect your cap again. I did previously. These are all really great looking. You may run into a cap that's kind of tight like I am right now. Doesn't quite want to go. And these caps are kind of fitted, so I may have grabbed one. Yep. Okay, done. Won't have a problem with that valve typically. That one, he's pretty good. Doesn't act up. This one is one you will have a problem with, possibly. Won't downshift 4 to 3. Potentially, I've seen upshift problems with it into 3 and 4, even though I don't quite understand how that's working quite yet. I'm still learning too, guys. This is your pilot and your 3/4 or 4/3 sequence valve. The pilot, not this guy so much. These springs get weak. Always inspect that. They should be in good condition. The pilot valve, this guy is the one that likes to get stuck. That's something to check. Make sure he has no scratches, nothing like that, hasn't torn up the bore. Heavy steel valves and aluminum really don't mix. So this one is just going to go in this orientation here. And then we are going to put the valve here in. Nice and tight. And this is a good time, just go ahead and double check your work. Take your screwdriver, poke your valves back and forth. Make sure they return to where they are supposed to at their resting position at the end. Next thing, we're going to do the infamous PWM. Now, I'm going to put this back in the stock way. However, and the stock way goes like so. This slot here, 4 slot over, and this valve will go that way. One of the fixes, and you will have to buy different ones pending your model year, this would be in the category of 96 up. This is a TCC fix-it valve. This one's from 1995 to 2000. This is something to where you can slip this in, it has a bunch of O-rings on, and you would remove this valve and this spring and keep the backside. This almost always fixes any leaky bore right here and immediately turns the PWM into a much better functioning, no pulse system. So we're gonna say we are 80 years old and we want that slip and lock up because I don't wanna feel it. So we're gonna put this PWM valve, that is the late style, back in the way we took it out. Many guys do lockdown PWM, that is okay to do. What you don't want is a leaky valve bore in this instance at all. It will, you might be chasing a pump when it's really this is the lockup circuit that is bad on you. So any TCC codes along with that pump right here. I did a whole video on that as well. And as soon as I find a cap, we're gonna put our end cap back in, inspect it, and boom. These clips don't matter if you put them in this way or the other way either. It's just a directional thing. I'm putting them in the stock way. If you're a guy that wants quick access to your valves without dropping a valve body, and if you can fish them out of there, if you're good enough, go put them on the other side. It don't hurt. And I'm gonna wait for this because it's gonna fall out. This is your 3-2 downshift valve that goes here, but I know I'm gonna turn this around and flip it, so we'll do that at the end. It's gonna fall right out of there. Same with the manual valve. Now, we're moving on to your shift valves, your second accumulator valve, your EPC slot, shift solenoids, and the forward piston, and the manual valve over here with the tensioner and all that. This is probably the area that most guys are going to focus on, and the problem area, the valve body. If your forward pistons is cracked, you can have all kinds of problems. Forward fluid is the main fluid, like I said before. Your 1-2 valve here, or your 2-3 valve here, will cause a variety of shift problems. I've done a diagnosis video on shift solenoids, which I encourage you to check out, but you will usually throw a code for these as well. Your 1-2 accumulator valve, that is going to affect your 1-2 shift along with the 1-2 accumulator. So this is going to go along with your shift kit that you've selected, whatever one you want. We have 7 check balls in this valve body, all of which need to be there unless your shift kit tells you not to do so. I'm going to put all in, like I said, this is a perfect OEM video. So we'll start off with the 1-2 valve. The 1-2 valve in its orientation goes in this channel and goes in like this. Spring first. I call it the stick, nipple, something, and valve. This one's got a lot of tension. Okay. The next one will be your 2-3 valve and 2-3 pilot valve. And they go in this orientation in the next slot. So your 2-3 valve and your 2-3 pilot valve. And just wiggle and ease. Don't be forceful. This valve does not have a spring in front of it. It is just standalone. Most of the other valves, pretty much every other one other than the manual linkage, has a spring behind it. The next thing we're going to install is our 1-2 accumulator. This thing may cause people problems. Your valve body must be very clean to pull this out, or it will get stuck and you will be fucked. Trust me. Ask me how I know how many valve bodies I ruined in my young years. Just that little piece of dirt, man. Ruined pliers, picks, all kinds of stuff. The best way to pull this out, which I didn't go over, I figure people are better at taking things apart than they are putting them back together. I like my hooked pliers. When this is in there, you just hook them and pull. A pick you might fuck up, but those are pretty sturdy. We want to clean our valve, make sure it's free of fluid erosion, which for the most part they should be. And we're going to use our valve in there. Make sure it strokes, all that good stuff. You want to use, like, you know, you could do shit like this. Throw a little oil in your valves before you stroke them. A little oil on this wouldn't hurt. It is a very tight machine fit. And I am missing the spring that goes behind this, so we'll cut there. All right, so the biggest thing with this is you'll put your valve in, put a little tranny fluid on it, or grease, it's fine. Make sure it moves back and forth and is very free. You don't want that valve hanging up, it will cause a big delay. Free moving valves, tight clearances, and general surface area, volume, and pressure is going to equal a premium unit. It is going to bring all your shift timing together and really help with tuning, make it a lot easier to get this thing to run the best it can. Once you put the valve in with the nipple out in its casing here, you are usually on the end going to find a red spring. I have a green one, which the tension is great on it. It's not going to give me a super hard shift or anything. You want to be careful if you find there are many of these out there. They come in the HD2 kits, and I don't mean to talk any smack for you favorite guys, but these red springs for the 4L60 HD2 kit are bad. They are too hard. So please avoid this spring at all costs. This is a stiff motherfucker. And you can tell by the coiled up center. OEM stuff doesn't have that. So please be leery if you ever find a coiled up center spring. Now, we're going to slide this in this orientation. And this is very tight. This is something you 110% want to take your time on. Just let it go in all by itself with the little square which holds our roll pin in, which holds the valve in. That up, your roll pin is here. So easy in. See how easy this is? Not even trying. You will have to hold it in there a little bit. Give a nice tap. 1-2 accumulator, complete. Typically not a real big problem child unless you've bought a used unit and it shifts too hard or soft for you. Moving on, we're going to throw some solenoids in right now and finish off the forward accumulator and reverse abuse, forward abuse, reverse abuse area, a couple other valves. So we have some new solenoids here. Just because they're new doesn't mean they're good. New parts can fail or be faulty. So sometimes if you swore you've done everything right and you have a no shift issue, you very well may have done everything right. And hopefully you set a code and it's so simple like a solenoid. And don't beat yourself up on that. Nothing you could have done to prevent it except test the solenoid, which is very hard for a normal person to do. Again, see my video recently in diagnosing solenoids. It's pretty good. I'm really trying not to make this video too awful long. So here we have our 1-2 solenoid. And the clips here go on the side you're most used to looking at under the vehicle, not up here. And now we will put in our EPC. EPC is pressure control solenoid. It operates in 5 steps and kind of mitigates the pump. The pump's just going to pump, EPC meters it. Let's just say that. I try to explain things in a very simple way. For the tech heads that or builders out there that just I'm not giving enough, you guys know enough, read a book, you'll figure it out. You know, I'm here for the average Joe, and I don't need any, you know, don't gotta earn any respect from nobody. The EPC is going to correlate directly to this plug on your harness. You may have one of 2 types. You'll have a blade type or a prong type, and you'll have a plug type. Plug type's later, prong type's earlier. So you can kind of go that based on your. I have both here today. Oh, that's a new one of those. I have one here somewhere. That feels like it. That's heavy. Heavy solenoid. This can go bad if you have low pressure. This solenoid screen, right here and here, they may be clogged up with debris from your previous failure or just a dirty transmission. And it's Sometimes you can just clean it out and save it and keep your vehicle going. Other times debris is going to keep pumping through there, but that's what that screen is supposed to help with. So if you have high pressure, the solenoid may just be bad, stuck open, or have an electrical fault in general, or you might have left it simply unplugged. This is what we do when we force limp mode, by unplugging the main connector. Fortunately, it's a little bit of a pricey solenoid, but it's an easy repair. There are many videos on that, and it usually takes a couple minutes after you drop the pan. And always remember, when you're diagnosing, if you're a shop, it's possible to diagnose low line pressure and easier than it is to diagnose a failed or high pressure scenario. So just keep that in mind. This EPC is going to slip nicely in that hole with the plug cocked to the, I guess in the vehicle, if I'm staring at the front, would be the lower right hand position at 45. This is the retaining bracket for it. The flat piece actually is what holds the solenoid in. It's like spring steel. It looks a little iffy, but I promise it works. I've never seen anything fail in that instance. So we're just going to put our 8mm screw there, and I'm going to switch bits. The torque spec for this is 8 foot-pounds. And that goes with all the other bolts on the valve body as well. Just looking for some adapters here because I have a mismatch of tools. And this might be a little difficult, but 8.2, close enough. So EPC's in, all that good jazz. Now we are going to do the abuse valves right here. Now this one here has another one of those plugs that you got to inspect that can fail. Fortunately, this one isn't too much of an issue for some reason. The other one, maybe it's because third gear is so demanding, the other one sees much more abuse. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this here valve in here, just a little guy. We're going to put the nipple side in. Feeling pretty enthusiastic about this build right now. I have never done this, and I had a lot of fun today doing a valve body for you guys, as hard as it is to do it upside down. Okay, valve first, then the spring, and then we're going to follow the same principle, keeping this hole lined up with our roll pin hole in the valve body. And this one is a little tricky to get in, just because of a giant opening. Just take your time, be easy with it, and constantly keep an eye on your roll pin hole. And once you get it close, do some acrobatics. You put your roll pin in just like so. And the next valve in front of it goes in this orientation. This one can cause reverse problems if it is in any way damaged. It's extremely unlikely. I've only seen it in rare instances where you have to modify it for a trans brake, and mistakes happen. So we're finishing up with the valve body. We want to grease this bore up, make sure it's nice and smooth. We're going to put our new metal accumulator in. No cracking in the future. The best way to do this is put your pin in as your guide. The piston, unlike the 1-2 accumulator, will go in like this first with the cup side out. Just give a firm push. It should make a nice thump noise, slide in very easily, and then we put our abuse spring in there, along with this green return spring there. Then quite simply, the cap goes on like this, and we have to start threading our small remainder 3/8 millimeters into the holes. And again, forgive me, this is really difficult upside down. Okay. These, quite simply, just gonna run them in with an impact gun, very, very gently. No ugga-duggas, boys. I know it's funny, but $3,000 might not be funny when it messes up. And don't pinch your fingers. I've done that too. So we're going to torque those again, 8 foot-pounds. If you go 9, it's okay. It's these bolts are not too awful critical, and trust me, 8 foot-pounds is plenty. They are not coming out. All that's left is, you guys would scream if you saw the piles of stuff that's just, I'm working through here. But right now I'm gathering up my balls. And what we should have is 7 check balls, okay? These are the ones that go in the valve body. We have one in the bathtub here, one here. This is for engine braking primarily. Be careful about this one. It can fall off into your manual linkage shaft and actually stop it. It's the only one capable of doing harm. And we have third and your second gear. There you have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You take a still shot, pause the video if you're a little confused, but each has a little divot and a cube. Now, to help you guys do this, if you are building and placing the valve body down, smash some grease in there. Don't be scared of it. Just put a wad, smear it. Make sure it's in there, because trust me, it will dissolve. You do not want this falling out on your garage floor, not seeing it, and then bolting this up. It's a laundry list of problems. Now, you don't gotta be the Incredible Hulk with this stuff, but you definitely have to make sure it's in there. So just be liberal, be generous. And the very last thing is that valve I was talking about that I knew would fall out on me, because it just will. That guy goes right here. That spring on this valve is very, very, very temperamental. That spring can be bought through Sonax. It is a great idea to make sure it's in good shape. You may experience a very not good feeling 3-2 downshift. So if you're experiencing a very weird 3-2 downshift, your fluid's not burn up, and you obviously have looked, it's not the band, shit's not all over the pan, chances are it's your valve body. A lot of shift issues come from this. So if you have a shift issue and even a TCC issue, sometimes a pressure issue. Take a look at the valve body. And the last thing is the tensioner, which you do not have to take on or off to do this. I have, but it's simply a 13mm bolt that goes right here. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed me finally doing a valve body freehand from scratch the right way. Make sure it's clean, take your time, and always just be focused and have a good time doing it. Stay tuned. We're going to move on to the best part. We're going to assemble this bitch up, do the servo, band clearance, and everything else you would want to know. Stay tuned.